I think to understand what is happening in Nepal in terms of particularly indigenous peoples' movements for political autonomy, it is important to understand the long history of Nepal. So, like we can say, like for the last 300 years, in the late 18th century, Nepal had different indigenous groups occupying specific territories, and they had their political autonomies. Then there was this mainstream people will call it the process of national integrations, by which one of a Hindu king in the mid hills started a military campaign of conquest and getting the other territories included into his kingdom. So he had this military campaign, so through which he conquered the present, more than the present day territories of Nepal, and transformed that as one kingdom. So that is an important historical event through which different groups were brought into one political unit, but not as an equal group. So the rurals always thought Nepal as a Hindu kingdom, a pure land of Hindus, even purer than India. So that was their political imaginations. So different groups were stratified, ranked into caste group. That was a state policy. So caste system in Nepal, unlike in India, is not just a religious phenomenon. It was a legal system. The first major marginalizing experiences indigenous people of Nepal experienced was the territorial dispositions.
They did not have private land ownership system, that not an individual could own a land. It was communally owned property.
When they were annexed into the nation-state making processes, their territorial lands were first thing taken as the state property. The king was the owner of the land. So, and he said, so the state became the landlord. And the indigenous people who were using this land for centuries, they became the taxpayer of that land. They were required to provide labor services, and they were required to provide tax for using their ancestral land. The first actually legal code of Nepal was based on caste ranking. So all these different groups, which were different than the ruling Hindu groups, Hill Hindus, became caste groups, rank in a different strata of caste ranking, definitely considered quote unquote impure, lower than the ruling groups. They become politically marginalized. They became economically marginalized. And the other point was that, again, then the ruling group started a kind of cultural colonizations, the policies of cultural assimilation. Just to give an example, in the caste ranking, the indigenous groups were classified as what is called matawali. Matawali means groups who drinks alcohol. So they were considered as alcohol drinking groups. And they were legally considered as, one group was considered as enslavable. They could be made slaves. So I'm talking about 1854. They could be made slaves, and one who could provide military services to the ruling groups were not considered as slaveable. One of the important characteristics of Hindu nation was the respect for the cows. Cow was is considered as a sacred, holy animals, and there are many indigenous groups who consume beef. Since they were beef eaters, they were not only considered as polluting caste, many of them were also imprisoned. You could be imprisoned for a life. So this was, a value systems of the ruling Hindu groups, which was imposed as a law. When they used to enter Kathmandu, they were not allowed to stay within the ritual boundary of the Kathmandu city. In the evening, they had to go out of that ritual boundary. So you can see that kind of social distancing. and you can understand what kind of ramifications they have. So they were all considered as low caste, impure, and all only good for providing labors. After 1950s, for example, Nepali, the language which is the national language, was made the official language, and education was started in Nepali languages, and the state purposely discouraged mother tongue educations in order to promote what was the policy called one language, one nation policy.
You may be talking about Nepali language. Nepali, namaste, you know namaste. That is Nepali. Nepali language's real name is not Nepali, it is Khas. Have you heard of Newars? Newars speak different language from Nepali. Do you know that? You can read the history. The language the Newars people speak is called Nepal language. So it is co-opted. So it has very much convoluted and twisted history that we are reading in Nepal in terms of how Nepal came into existence.
All these were done in the name of promoting the national integrity, national unity. But what it did was it promoted one certain group's value systems while not only excluded other groups' culture, but it also had a very marginalizing effects for others. In the late 2000s, with the kings, then people's movements, the monarchy was thrown out of, through people's movements. And then we had a debate about how to transform Nepal into an egalitarian, nation state. The issue of federalism came. So it was considered that, in order to transform Nepal into an equal and inclusive nation state, there was a need to restructure the centralized political system. So the question was, what kind of political system do we need? So indigenous groups and even Maoists have advocated for that Nepal's federalism should be based on ethnic identity, history, and geography. So then we see a new kind of movements emerging in Nepal where all indigenous groups started to, demand their ethnic autonomy, ethnic rights.
These different parties, dominant political parties were not serious enough in terms of ensuring the right of the indigenous people, ensuring the political right of the marginalized people, in terms of ensuring the right of the cultural right and environmental right and land right of the indigenous people. If they would incorporate the issue of identity and federalism in the constitution, it will actually bring the high caste domination in the power to an end, because you have to leave the power, you have to leave the power when you have federalism. How Nepal state is working until now is in the past as a Hindu state, as a monarchical state, like the high caste Brahmins and Kshatriyas, have the strong grip over the power. So when you incorporate the issue of identity, all those marginalized, indigenous people's identities, when it is institutionalized in the constitution, in that case also the dominant caste groups, caste Brahmins and Kshatriyas, they would lose the part of the power they are enjoying. So in federalism, by principle and in practice also, the power devolution is the most important. You have to, leave power the power sharing. What level of power the local indigenous peoples have and what level of power the central state mechanism has. This is why they don't want to lose the power at all. They want to continue with their power domination, their hegemonic control over other peoples.
So this is not a secessionist movement. This is indigenous people are not trying to say, oh, we want a separate nation state. No, what they're trying to do is they're trying to claim that okay, this has been our historical ancestral territories, and we have been living for here. We have been marginalized. Now we want to, based on our historical territory, we want to have our political rights. We want to be represented politically. So that is what a basic political autonomy they're asking for.
In the indigenous people's politics, there is a phrase, right to self-determination, that whether you will be able to determine your politics yourself or not. Collective right to self-determination, collective right, who we are based on identity, history, memories of the ancestors, those kind of things.
They take as a moral practice. It's something they have to do. It's something their fathers and their grandmothers have done in the past, and they must do it so that the children would speak, the language, would respect their religions, so that they could continue as a collectives. I think that has been a major learning for me.
Since I am a university teacher and since I am a regular student even now, in a US university, I am still in teaching and studying. My main focus is not towards becoming a full-time, political party cadre now. But my goodwill, my best wishes are there for them.